Got it for Jim.
I like the lectures actually. You know, and it shows
There's its own person. Yeah, I call it. Suggestion today. You're gonna get a couple of stupid stuff.
Those people don't think share. No, it's different than hiding the
The guardian of the.
Appreciate it on this gorgeous night. I plan to get you out here tonight. Roll the bond and wear the out. Have a nice day in the clothes. Very happy. So, welcome, I'm Tracy Clothier, a lot of you know me, but I am a planner. I have my own firm, planning and consulting. And this is Drew Alberti. Drew,
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve, the town development director. Tracy has asked me to join her to help with your house.
and both of us have been in this business for years. So we've been to a lot of communities and kind of understand the process pretty well. So, I also want to thank the county who put together these maps free of charge for the town. And we will be using those and we'll be adding to them. They've been really great. And, I'll bring the committee up too. So let me go over the agenda for tonight. I'm gonna, talk about what this project is. And then we'll talk about actually creating a vision for the community. And then I'll have you get up, we'll review these posters that are around here. And try to stimulate you in thinking about some of the ideas for the community. And then you'll be set free to have cookies and water and walk around and put red dots on things that you don't approve of and green dots on things that you like, that you do approve of. And they are pink dots. This is supposed to be red, just so you know. And then there's lots of stickies. Be free. This is good. This is a great opportunity to talk together, communicate, put your thoughts down, and we'll be listening. Our job is not to tell you what to do. It is to be the listener. Okay? So, doing this plan. You have a plan for 2010, so this is an update to that plan. It serves as a guide so that all the boards in the town can make future decisions. And New York State requires that zoning be in accordance with the comprehensive plan. So your zoning today should be consistent with the 2010 plan. If you update the zoning, it will be consistent with the 2022 plan that we are doing. It encourages collaborative thinking from everybody. You don't really get that in communities unless you do this type of effort. So it's really very good group thing. Our advisory committee is made up of a cross section of the community. Everybody on the committee, could you raise your hand just so people know? Yes. Okay. So we've got a nice group here. Some people are away. But it's a great committee and we've been meeting, I think we've had 4 meetings so far, to date. Doing a comp plan also ensures that whatever you come up with in terms of recommendations will be supported in the community. You get really good support. People will be decisive. They'll be committed. They'll know what they want to believe in here. One of the things, the outcomes of this is a future land use map. And those are really fun and you will be able to use that, post it in the town hall, put it on the website, and it tells about all the recommendations that we came up with in the plan itself, whether they be land use suggestions or actual written recommendations for different things in the town. So there's 5 steps to creating a vision. Where are we now? What are the existing conditions? And our group has already put that together for the most part. Maps depict existing conditions, zoning, land use, topography, the assets in the community, which is, where most of the our community services are, et cetera, natural resources and land use map. And we'll go over those afterwards. Where are we going? That's kind of what we're doing now. Is we're kind of trying to figure out how can Lake Luzerne shift and meet the changes that are today. Changes in demography, the changes in land use, the changes in tourism, et cetera. How do we get there? Those are the actions in the and then how are we making progress? And that's where a lot of plans start to fail. They get put in a cupboard, and many of them are just a little too light. In other words, they're kind of loosey-goosey. They're not concrete. They don't offer concrete recommendations. So that's where we're going with this effort, is to get some really concrete ideas and who's gonna be responsible for them and how are they going to actually be carried out. So creating a vision, how is the town changed? Well, it's significant since 2000, and my little cartoon here is really based on, I had a couple copies up here about, that we did a few years ago about the safety at Adirondack Park. And it shows how, children are falling off, EMS people, young people, college kids, leaving people who need work, and leaving, seasonal people, and others that are left behind who can't move without foundational resources. So some of these things are just out of their control. It's just national demographics show that there's fewer kids per family. People are taking only 1 to 3 day vacations, right? Remember when your family would come for 1 to 2 weeks and camp or stay someplace? Right, go on. Destination vacations where places like the Great State invite you to come and you pay the money and then they hold you on site or nearby. They don't want you to go out to Luzerne or anywhere else. They really want to hold you, and there's a lot more of that. The IP mill closing was your anchor for jobs. Gone. And nothing to take its place. And the exodus of young people. And why is that? Well, that's also a national condition of young people leaving the rural areas and going where there is consistent Wi-Fi and cell service and all the other services that they like to have. So can the town itself adjust to these demographic changes while staying economically viable? I mean, can you do that and still stay true to your character? Does Lake Luzerne have a strong sense of place? And we're going to ask you to answer these questions and think about them. So we'll start by, how many of you think that Lake Luzerne is a dynamic place? Show of hands. Dynamic. Distinctive. Distinctive. Okay. Affordable. Is it affordable? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay. Is it inclusive? Not particularly. Meaning what?
Yeah, what does that?
Just meaning that you're open to other people from other places. Okay, so it's diverse? Not particularly, right? Do you think it is a place that's environmentally responsive? Pretty much. So not, you're not going, oh yeah, they're incredible. The town's incredible. Okay, needs work. Okay, vibrant. Some people describe Saratoga Springs as a vibrant place. Would you describe Lake Luzerne as vibrant? Okay. Prosperous.
No.
Oh, prosperous. Friendly? Friendly. Okay, that's something to take with you. Okay, friendliness is a huge characteristic that will carry you forward in a positive way. Does Lake Luzerne have a strong sense of place? Meaning when you're here, do you feel very well anchored here? Like it's yours? Okay. Do any of you feel like you want to move because you don't want to be here anymore? Are any of you absolutely married to living here forever because you love it so much? Okay, that's good. That's very good. Okay. So when you create a vision, lots of places look at other places and say, well, I want to be like them, or I want to, we have to have a boardwalk or whatever it is. So I just put together some that are around us: Bolton Landing, Elizabethtown, Saranac Lake, Greenwich Village, Schuylerville, Lake George, Ticonderoga, Corinth, and the Woodstock in Vermont and New York, right? They're all distinctive. Would you agree? And they're all pretty well anchored. I think they're okay. At least Ticonderoga is, as long as the mill is open up there. Then after the mill closed someday, that's a different story. But when I saw this, I said, well, what distinguishes and differentiates Lake Luzerne from these other places? And what do you think?
And around that folk school, the music camp, it's quite unique.
Outdoor recreation, the Adirondack Folk School, the music camp, do we call it music camp? Double H, definitely.
Well, Nettle Meadows with their cheese production.
Nettle Meadow,
It's a rodeo.
the rodeo.
Like the school across that has a lake that you can go out to, not many places have that.
Right, right. How about its walkability? So, well, you do though, you know, walkability is all about, say, an older person lives down off Main Street in that area here, and or a mother with little children and no car, no second car. You know, older people who want to take walks, all people want to take walks. Walkability is important, and if you look at Lake Luzerne, it's really interesting. Because you have a library, you have a museum, several museums, you have post office, all walkable. The school, who has a school that's walkable today? Grocery store, pharmacy, bank, did I say that, bank? So all these core things are all in the same area. Churches, in that you have trails downtown, you have parks downtown. It's pretty unique in the communities that I know, to have that walkable element in such a pretty setting. I mean, to me, Lake Luzerne is a very beautiful little community. Beautiful. I didn't put it down, but I think it's beautiful. Personally. So when I think about Lake Luzerne, say, well, what is it that's succeeding here? And you just mentioned them all. And some of those are new businesses that have come in. You didn't mention Hotopia. And that is, I guess, I've heard it's enormously successful. So you say to yourself, well, okay, these are the things that are actually being successful. How do we knit those things together to market Lake Luzerne as a place, to tell its story, right? What is your story? Do the people who come to the Adirondack Folk Life School, do they also like to go to Nettle Meadow? Do they like to stay at Hotopia? Or maybe downtown to James? Do they, what else do they enjoy? Do they like going whitewater rafting? Some of these things you begin to knit together, the cultural attributes of the Luzerne Music Center. And that kind of thing, you start knitting the story together. So what do you need to make all these ingredients come together? And to me, you need a major destination downtown to make it all fit. And I was thinking about, and with the committee has talked about this, is taking one of the vacant, underutilized, abandoned buildings downtown and turning that into an Adirondack store, similar to out at exit 21, there was the Adirondack Mountain Club. They had a beautiful store, maps and clothing and all kinds of gifts that are very Adirondack-y. What if you had that downtown and you marketed that idea to the developer and you had a cafe or a little restaurant associated with it, and it becomes a destination into itself, but it feeds the need for a restaurant downtown for sure. And a place for people to go, an alternate place for people to go. Because once you have 1, 2, 3 places for people to go, or maybe they just go to a concert and one other location, maybe a museum, you've held them for 4 hours. You captured them, right? They have to have lunch or dinner. They have to have that, and that's the key. Pretty simple. It's really pretty simple. So what's the story you'd like to tell of Lake Luzerne? I mean, you're not for the slots, right? You don't have the ponies. There's lots of things that you're not. What are you? And what do you want to do? And is this the consistent, these new businesses and new ideas in the community, are they a great fit with with a new recreation economy? Something to think about. Okay. So we're next going to move on to these boards, and they're really meant to inspire some questions in you and get you to think about things, so that when you're done with our presentation, you'll be able to go around and talk and look at the questions again and put some comments out there, and so you can give our committee a little more, just a little more support in thinking about what it is the community wants to do. I'm going to let Drew take this.
I will switch with you so I can stand closer to the microphone.
Right.
Hopefully everybody can hear me. Can everybody hear me in the back? Excellent. So I want to walk you guys through some of the boards that you guys are going to find across the room here, and kind of inspire some ideas about some of the things that we are looking to hopefully get out of you in terms of what it is that you want, what it is that you don't want, and possibly how we get there. So the biggest question that we're going to answer today is Lake Luzerne a good place to live? What makes it a good place to live? What are all the elements? If you were to break it down and say, yeah, okay, it's a good place to live, but what is it that makes it such a good place to live? You're gonna break that down into a lot of different smaller questions, but that is really the big and underlying questions. Are your services adequate for basic health care? If you get sick, you have to travel very far to get to a doctor. If you need medicine, you need to travel very far to go to a pharmacy. Or if you get sick on a weekend, what do you guys do? Or if there's an emergency, such as a fire, a medical health emergency, how are those services? Like, is the response time going to be quick? Do you need something additional? Is there possibly an area that is underserved or an area that's maybe overserved? Senior services. This is a big question that we're coming across a lot, particularly within the blue line. Is, we have an aging population, and what is it that they provide you? Are there activities and things for you guys to do if you are no longer capable of taking care of yourself or need some help? Is there somebody who can help you? Or is there a Warren County Senior Disability Services or Senior Services? Is there somebody local? Is there a way for a person who is no longer maybe capable of driving or getting food, capable of getting basic necessities? Or do they need to move to a place like Clifton Park or Malta in one of those senior assisted facilities, or a different place where everything is a lot closer? If you can't get them here, they're going to go there, and your population is going to continue to decline. What about you? You got your school. What do they do before or after school? What about young parents with young children? Childcare. Is there adequate childcare within your community? It's a big question. People like me, I have 2 very young children. I ask myself this question all the time. Do you have universal pre-K? If you do, is it full time? How do you enable working parents and working families to keep on working in your community so that they can stay here, as opposed to moving someplace that's maybe even more affordable, plain cheaper, so that they can maybe have one parent that stays at home? How are they solving those problems? Are there services within your community that can enable more young people to make this their home? Education. What's your school? I hear you have one, but Is there things within your school community that can help them get new skills and trades and ability to work here within the community so that when they graduate high school, that they can stay here in your community as opposed to going off to college and then saying, well, why am I going to go back there? So these are all good questions in terms of the bigger question, is Lake Luzerne a good place to live? Yes. Tourism. Tracy mentioned that, Great Escape, their goal is to keep you there as long as possible. And being one of those people with young children, that I just spent 12 hours there the other day. So I'm exhausted, but your goal should be to encourage people to stop and stay and spend time here. We call it the 3 Ps of tourism: detain, detour, detain, and divest. You want to get them off the Northway, you want to get them from Lake George and adhere into your community, keep them here as long as possible, so you can take a look. And that's our goal. But is it a good place to visit? What is it you're known for? If I were planning a family vacation and I'm saying, well, I want to go and I want to have an outdoor adventure and I want to go and experience, maybe spend some time taking a hike, going to the beach, spending some time on the lake. Why am I going to choose Lake Luzerne versus Stony Creek versus Lake George, Nate, Bolton, any of the destinations on Lake Champlain? You guys have a lot of resources, but you're also surrounded in a very large area in the world of natural environment. So what distinguishes you? Tracy asked this question before, but what distinguishes you? What makes it a place that you would want to come to and a place that I'm going to stay, and it makes it a destination? What is the experience of visiting? Because ultimately a successful community is not only is going to be you guys that live here and want to stay here and love this place, but you got to attract new residents. You got to hopefully attract visitors at the base of your economy. How do you do that? Is your community welcoming? Yeah, they're incredibly welcoming. Very, very nice. And I love coming up here, been up here a lot of times. So you guys are very welcoming. But if I didn't know you guys and I'm just coming in off the street, how do I better welcome you? How do I know that this is a friendly place, a place that I want to at least take my kids out of the car, go to the bathroom, take a walk around and see, well, what's more that's here for us to do. Now, when you got me here, do visitor destinations, amenities, or services need improvement? How do I find my way throughout your community? When I find my way, what is my experience when I get there? You guys have wonderful museums and cultural historical sites. How do I know what they are and why they're worth visiting? These are all great questions. We talked in our committee last time about a welcome center that we weren't quite sure who owned it. So how do you get those services and information across? We also asked the big question, who here is familiar with the First Wilderness Heritage Corridor? Oh, well, that's good. Glad to hear. What are those services that need improvement? Do you have a website? Do you have a social media presence? How am I going to be made aware of it? And when I get here and I go to the beach, is there a clean bathroom for my kids? It's all great questions. What about your hiking trails? Who maintains them? Are they well maintained? Are they well marked so that I can easily find them? You guys have a beautiful beach. It's just hidden around the corner. And unless you have a camp here or you're local, you know that it's there. You want people to know that it's there. I know it's not good to be back. You want people to know that it's there, or perhaps you want to increase various other amenities. Maybe that's you want basically you want to be maybe your own places like town beaches, open to town residents. What do visitors need to come or stay longer on a regular basis? Families like mine, we like going to certain places. We like knowing what I'm going to get when I'm going to get there. What type of things I'm going to do when I'm going to get there. Keep that plan ahead because I got to pack for every little instance. What was it that I need that I stay here long? I mean, Tracy mentioned the big one. I need a place to eat. You know, don't feed my child for very long. She can get very cranky with the kid. And by child, I meant my wife. Angry is a real thing. And I'm the same way, so I'm just joking. How can your seasonal workforce be bolstered? How do you get youth engaged or re-engaged into taking those summer jobs or internships or gaining some kind of experience? How is it that you build their resumes and other things to do that? If you have people who live here in the community, and many communities do, where people rely entirely on even a construction season to get by. They're not really doing a whole lot during the winter when all the snow's here. So how can that seasonal workforce be bolstered? How can you bring new industry here, create a industry around doors?
Good too.
Yeah, I think so. So
That was it. It's the next one.
that's the next one. Okay, so recreation, history, and culture. You guys have a ton of it. Ton of it. In fact, I think that you guys have more museums in a downtown area than most places that I've ever been. How do those things come together? How do you make that part of your experience? If I'm here and I am interested in learning who you are, where you came from, how you came to be here, and all the wonderful little quirky stories that comes along with it. How is it that I'm going to navigate my little community? How is it that I'm going to find those things? And those the things that are really important to me. I need to know where the things are, what's there when I get there, and I need to know the hours when they're open. You guys have a ton of history. The schoolhouse, the old tannery building.
Pulp mill.
Old mill. What are you doing with that?
Good job.
I see that.
Yeah, Andrew, too.
To answer that question, you just gotta look up Sue Wilder.
I am Sue Alder, and I am the coordinator of ambassadors for our visitors. We have 4 historic sites in our town within walking distance. And the Historical Society, under our leadership of Howard Daver as our president, has put together a walking, driving windshield tour map. And on it, the map shows you different places that have some historic information about it. But we didn't have the building, we took a picture of the blue signs that they have there. And it's all within walking distance. And then the other side of the map tells you a little more history about each of these spots. And we have these at our visitor center and at our museum, and our schoolhouse. I think one thing that would work really well in this area might be a designated heritage district. And just then you could promote the heritage of our town, and we, here history is our story. This is.
So when you refer to as a heritage district, are you talking about a national register district?
No, just coin it as our historic district. But if you could talk registry, the one-room schoolhouse should be put on the national registry of one-room schoolhouse. It is an official one-room schoolhouse. Never was anything else, always a schoolhouse. And that would certainly put it on that registry.
And if I could add soon, the letterboxing,
Right.
we have Warren County provided the library work at a box of those, booklets. They're in Lake George, they're going like, wow.
They are. It was one of the most wonderful things that the First Wilderness Corridor did, was to put out these letterboxes. Everybody likes to find a treasure.
They're very,
They love to stamp them, and they love getting notoriety that they've done it, and they get the. Yes. We're working in a good.
You guys have so much
There was a book years ago, Timber and Tannery, is that the word? Is that what answer any question you got? That's the book you gotta get. Or pass on,
Get it, I shall.
or read.
I am a huge consumer of history. That's my primary guide. So I would love to.
Well, that book will answer anything you need to know.
Hell, yes, they. So within these resources, is there a way that you want to enhance them?
Read the book.
Well, that's a good point. So I can get this information by reading the book. How do I know that people are there? And how does that information convey places that don't exist anymore?
That's history.
Well, that's exactly it.
That's one thing, is the building that we're talking about.
One of the big questions that we've been asking quite a number of people is, how do you tell the story of a thing that isn't there anymore?
That's too well.
That's it.
Back to the wire.
So we also talked a little bit about recreation. You guys have a ton of recreation. And one of the things that we talked about within our committee about recreation is what you guys consider to be the off season. How do you enhance those off seasons? How do you create, if tourism is going to be a base for your economy, how do you create that as a year-round destination so that you can enhance it? Another thing we talked about is, geez, it's really hard to operate a restaurant because when the winter comes around and all the visitors go away, what is the base for that business? Well, what if you could keep those people year-round? What if you had work could enhance your winter activities or promote them so that you became more of a destination? You see that happening in Lake George with their winter festival. It gets bigger and bigger every year. They are very active in promoting a 4-season destination. You guys be a 4-season destination? Do you want to be a 4-season?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
About something that is here and always been here, and I think is an underutilized asset, which is not well full. It is gorgeous. If you talk about walkability, it is right next to everything in town. And if there was a little overlook, with more pedestrian friendly overlook, it seems to me that that could be packaged with some of the other ideas to create, and by the way, you also, when you're there, you see the remnants of one of the old mills on the other side of the bridge. So you've got the history there as well.
Yeah, that would be a wonderful idea. Something certainly we would want to consider within this plan is having an overlook so that you could better capture the scenic beauty, maybe create a roadside cool off or something like that, where, there, somebody can safely do that without clogging the side streets, because, you're not there. So how do you enhance that? So that's a wonderful. Thank you.
There's another idea that the committee worked on, and that is the idea of the playground. Maybe even a destination playground, because there's very few playground resources for kids in this town. But there are communities out there that actually build playgrounds that are so distinctive. Then you could build one that's distinctive to this place. It brings people from out of town and they come for the day, they take their kids to lunch or to a food truck or to the beach or whatever it is. So, okay, well, there are funds to do this, by the way, grants to do this. One of the places I think that is available is right over here in back. In back of the parking lot is a huge piece of land that the town owns. What if you built a destination playground there, followed by a bunch of trails that go down and through the woods that are for seniors and people with small children that are very walkable? I mean, you have seniors right here every day who come to this center for lunch and for other activities. It could be a multi-use area right back here, and serve a lot of purposes. Because there's really no flat place to walk that isn't right on.
That was really, we were looking at that for senior housing, federal senior housing, that hasn't come true, but that was a real initiative 10 years ago. I don't know where it stands today, but that certainly was needed. So,
Okay, they're gonna come up to housing, so get that in there too.
So within the area, the big question is, do the museums and the interpretive signage, interpretive signage usually refers to whether the first wilderness panels that you have around town, or you guys been to the national parks, they have what's called the waysides, so the ones that are on the 45-degree angle, and kind of read it, look over and say, tell the story about what you're looking at. Do you do that effectively?
What's that called?
It's called a wayside sign. Wayside,
What?
and they're just the 45-degree angle. Yeah, sorry. Industry jargon. I forget it sometimes.
There could be more of that.
There could be more of that. I love the tannery building. I think it's beautiful. It's distinctive. I mean, talk about something that's distinctive. And when I was looking at it, when we did our walking tour, I said, well, geez, I can't really see the base of it because now it's kind of overgrown. And there's nothing there to tell me about what it is. And even when we got to the schoolhouse, which was open, beautiful, we went inside, used the facilities and stuff like that. If you're not open on that particular day, how do I know what that is? Or if I come there after 5 or after your regular hours, how do I know what those things are? Maybe things that could be enhanced. You know, not all, there's a lot of technology out there too, you know, QR codes and being able to do link websites and stuff like that. How do you enhance that experience? And of course, if you talk to young people, even younger than myself, then, you know, digital media, video, stuff like that, telling different types of stories, those are all really interesting and different ways of approaching the idea of storytelling. You guys have such an amazing story. Let's tell it. Can we do it better when Sue's not here to tell us the whole story? Okay.
How about a timeline? Would Lake Luzerne be a good place for an actual timeline to develop it like you have for other towns through Lake Salah?
It certainly could be. Timelines are very interesting as a product because you get like 30 words to tell a story. So what's important to have in conjunction with timeline is if I have 30 words, just like those blue and gold markers, they're so narrow, the limitations on what story you can tell. How do you get that bigger story or the picture? I'll tell you guys, I love a good story, but I need a picture to go for with along with it when I'm learning about history. I need to know what it looked like. You know, I like to go to the journals and tell you what it felt like.
Yeah, there's an old bird's eye view map of Lake Luzerne, which is great because it talks about the cannery. It shows the cannery, and there are these old postcards that if you were to have those, I don't know how we put on it, something out in the open, but you know, Wayside Hotel would be where the high school is. I mean, I think that would be really interesting.
And I think until you get dependable Wi-Fi and internet coverage in the town, you're not going to be, I mean, you're going to be, but one of the biggest challenges that I see is getting people here and attracting people via their phones. And it's, unless you park in the school parking lot, there are a couple of different people's houses that have to get. You know, I pull over to check my email and check my Wi-Fi. I can't check it while I'm in town. Not even in town. But you can't, so all of these things.
Yeah, so basic needs, the basic need, to keep people here and to attract young people. And let's face it, to attract business people, you don't need an office anymore, but you do need your Wi-Fi and your cell. And
I find I used to be a that person. And I love maps. I think they're just incredibly important because I love paper. But these days, if I don't have my GPS and I don't know where I'm going, gee, you have that panic when the GPS signal goes out.
Yeah.
Like, I am not sure what I'm supposed to do next. And
Get a map.
I will let you know that I have a full page Jim Matco, 6 county thing of my cover. Still,
It's a very good point. Is there a plan to actually improve that accessibility in this area?
I think there is. I think the town's been working on that aspect for sure. A tower has gone up in Lake Lanier, correct? The phone tower, I understand, or in the process of going up. But that may not have enough height to solve the whole problem.
Whose control is that in? Is that in the government? Is that in the local or is it in corporations or?
The corporations, really. I mean, the town has to appeal, right, to the community.
These charter utilities.
Jim, can you speak to that?
It's capitalistic driven. In the case of the tower that's going up on Hall Hill Road, that was AT&T coming in, saying we'll get X number of customers, it's gonna cost us Y number of dollars, so the formula works. Also, part of it is the federal government, and I don't know the numbers, but the federal government encourages all the cell companies to expand their coverage. It's a mandate. It's really not up to the town to encourage cell coverage. However, Wi-Fi coverage and stuff like that, there are grants out there, I'm sure you guys are aware of them, that we probably could do some things. It's a real need. It's a chicken and the egg thing for private companies, you know, they want to make sure they're going to make the money, and we want the cell towers coverage.
basically you have state and federal government that's going to encourage cell phone development by skewing the numbers by providing public assistance. So where it's a numbers games for the corporations to come in, the state and federal government is trying to help tip the scales, so to say, with public funding in order to assist in, I believe it's called the Rural Broadband Initiative, and it's been, geez, I think I just went to a Chris Gibson thing at Glens Falls High School 10 years ago on that. So it's been around.
You know, all of these things are great, they really are. And one of the things we find in the motel business, the first thing that people ask is there a place to eat? And we're talking about all of these things, which are really good. But the first thing that you want to know is, can they go someplace to eat? And that's the biggest thing that this town really needs, is affordable, consistent places year-round to eat. And, you know, unfortunately, there's been some attempts, and I think some of the attempts have been made, the people who are writing really haven't listened or looked at the people who are here and taken their suggestion. For instance, one place said they were going to open up breakfast, and we said that was great. We needed a place for breakfast. So what did they do? They had brunch at 11 o'clock on Sundays. I mean, that's not breakfast. You know, so again, that the eating and the restaurants and whatever, I don't know what to do about it, but I'm just saying, there's really.
I think it's a similar situation to what we're talking about internet, which is this is capitalistic driven. And, you know, so how do you make it economically viable? And maybe that's been simply, I think, in my opinion, the first step is what you guys have all done right here and what we've said in committee. We need a restaurant, was the first thing that we said in committee. And certainly.
So are there similar to what Meadow Meadows did, you have a grant to do that, to their business? Is there grants that could be encourage restaurants or someone to, you know, to kind of want to get into that business? There is. Yeah, there is. Yes. So that would be critical.
But mostly low interest loan through the regional, Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board offers low interest loan grants are very competitive and hard to get. The lowest interest loans are not, they're pretty plentiful. It's just, you have to have a model where you're gonna make money. Nobody starts a business that is gonna lose money. And you had, when COVID hit, probably several of the places that were open here were borderline. Let's face it, right? So COVID hits, it takes them out, and who's gonna start a business when they're not sure of anything yet? There's a period of uncertainty, and we have to wait that out to some degree. But at the same time, when developers or when restaurateurs get wind that Lake Luzerne is doing something, and really thinking about their future, they think, hey, maybe we could go over there and start a business. That's all you can do. I mean, it really, that's all you can do. And it is kind of a waiting game, and it's not their fault necessarily. And that's why you get the food trucks, they can move around. They can move around and go to different festivals, and you might be more successful with that in a few years. Until people have confidence and think they can actually make it.
Tracy, there's another component to that. I'm sorry, somebody started to talk. So zoning, I think, in our town is an issue in terms of placing a restaurant. If you look at the zoning map, there's very little land where right now a restaurant is a conforming use. So when I was in business a million years ago, if I went in and wanted to do something, the last thing I wanted to do was have a year-long fight with the town as to whether or not I could put my business on that property. So I think maybe we could, as another incentive to get a restaurant in town, we could make a couple zones restaurant appropriate. Like right now, if you were going to build a restaurant, where would you put it in town?
In any of the vacant buildings.
I'm sorry.
I have to comment. Any of the vacant buildings, they're big enough. The churches for sale, that would be a great restaurant. Look at the parking that they have. Look at the visibility that they have. That'd be a great place for a restaurant. But I think as important as a restaurant is the internet connection, because people won't go anywhere unless they have their internet. You're a great example, but people need that internet connection, and it's just as important as a restaurant. Right, I have to comment. So there were restaurants, and I agree with Tracy that that COVID did put the nail in a lot of them. And some of them, the owners did age out. Okay, it is a young man's business for sure. It's a different business. It's not something that it's something that has to be supported year round, and quite honestly, there was not enough support to support year round restaurants here. The ones that are still thriving are Rocco's, the pizza place, gangbuster business, the Chinese place in town, gangbusters during COVID. She went to takeout only, that's what she had to do, and they're doing very well. Hadley General Store is now reopened. I don't know about Sweeties so much because I think ours were a little funky, but it is changing. But I have to say that what will be supported right now is mostly just a seasonal restaurant to the business here. And that's what's happening. And I think that's part of why Brookhaven, or not Brookhaven, I'm sorry, Bend of the River, he didn't make it, partially because he has restaurants in Albany and Latham that required more of his attention. And I think he was trying to make that year round. And unfortunately, he didn't have the staff during COVID. He didn't have the business. He tried everything. He was doing like $5 appetizers on a Sunday. He couldn't do it. His best bet was to close down and just open during the season, and he would have done fine. I think the cost of him staying open during an unsupported season was way more than what he could do. I do think that basically most visitors to this area and a lot of the residents, 20-minute drive to Lake George or Glens Falls, it is not a deal killer. I'm telling you right now, and he knows because he's young. People nowadays, they don't care if they're driving 20 minutes to a restaurant. That's nothing. To a lot of the visitors in this area, that's nothing. So I don't really feel like that is something that really you have to be too awfully concerned about. Most of the people that come here, they don't care about driving 20 minutes to Lake George or 5 minutes to. They don't care about going to Glens Falls. They don't care about going to Sarasota. It doesn't matter to them. And unfortunately, Upriver is closed, Waterhouse is closed. You know, there are still some restaurants in town, and I think, you know, it is enough to attract visitors. People who stay here, they don't want to be on the strip of Lake George. They like the quiet. There are families who like to come here and just be outside of that hubbub of Lake George. And they don't mind traveling 15 to 20 minutes for dinner.
And it's truly distinctive, and
I-
I would travel a lot further than.
Yes, exactly.
If I have to respond to that, I actually work at Paris part-time and we get a lot
Yes.
of people coming in asking where they can go for dinner that's not in Lake George.
I'm
Because they don't want to do the prep. But the thing is if you're going to try to pull in a restaurant business, you have like internet, yes, to publicize it. But it can't just be a restaurant geared towards the tourists. You have to have a local support. It's has to be a reasonably priced restaurant, like a dine, like a family fire.
And I think our town, this town area is small enough that we like community. So if you want to go someplace first thing in the morning and have coffee and check out with everybody what they're going to be doing for the day.
I was gonna ask, so what, I come from a restaurant background. I would love to. I ran Upriver for actually quite a few years, and that restaurant brought in a lot of people from many areas and was very successful. But he made enough money during the summertime where he could do what he wanted to in the winter. Does the community, what are some of these restaurants that have opened? I have been into Sally General since they've opened, or even Fiji. Or what has not been successful? What are those restaurants lacking that kept you from going to them? Like, what are you?
Your Sweeties when it was open.
Okay, so we have 2 comments on the back here. and,
Question, part of this planning process, are there gonna be other surveys or polls or whatever to identify the top priorities that community members have identified in terms of setting those goals in this 10-year plan? But what's the process in developing, you know, each topic that you're looking at would be broken down into 3 goals or 3 priorities, and then developing how that's gonna be established? I'm just kind of wondering what else will be done in terms of this planning process? And how else will we be gauging interest from other people that might not be able to come to town meetings or whatever to get a various demographic pool of our community? Because each one of us has particular needs that we want met, right? But as a whole, for our community, what are those? And how will they be prioritized in this plan?
Really good question. Yeah. First thing was to gather everybody, introduce them to the plan, start talking about, you know, what is the shape of this plan. We will have an online, probably on the website, where people will be able to go. You've heard of Survey Monkey. Yeah. We'll likely do something simple like Survey Monkey, where you can just click on and there'll be series of questions, and it's like a preference survey.
And how is that gonna be shared? So people know to do that. How will that be put out?
Well, you know, to get people here to the meeting, I use MailChimp through the town newsletter, which seems to be pretty good, and,
The Facebook page has.
our postcard could be postcard to people.
A lot of people don't.
Right, friends, people. Yeah, so we could do postcards, like a newsletter or something like that. That would be good. Sometimes you can put something inside the Sun. You guys get the Sun, right? The Community Sun.
First is what we do.
Did you say?
Local first.
Local first, that's the one, not the Community Sun. That was the situation. Okay.
And I have like 3 questions. Hadley's in the same boat that we're in, which is next door. All right. The next thing is we're a drop-off center between Lake George, Saratoga, and Glens Falls, dollar and cent wise. And number 3, you see one young person in here that's gonna make a change in this town, a young person. It takes a young person to change this town. We're all retired. You know what I mean? We take young blood to change things around, and there's no young blood in, maybe it's good people. Well, everybody else, they're not gonna change nothing. Any positive things, the reality is you need young, interested people who can don't have it. That's what he's got to get out of it. At the bottom line,
In this town.
Yeah.
Yeah. Family size, all of that.
We'll have like a full demographic profile.
Okay,
You
do
know,
you have information about tourism as well?
Yes, we will have that.
Okay, cool.
We'll start building the plans after this meeting. But the demographically, you know, the first 10 years after 2000, between 2000 and 2010, you gained, you know, almost 200 people. 2010 to 2020, you lost that almost the same amount of people. At the same time, the average age went up to 51 from, I think, 42. But this is very classic. This is going on all over, particularly in rural areas and particularly in the Adirondack. It is not just Lake Luzerne. These are trends. These are trends across the board, and some of those national cultural trends that you can't do anything about. So yes, the answer is I'll build that story for you.
Okay, thank you.
And I will.
Will the survey be open to people like in residents of Warren County that could answer, like participate in that survey?
So
that you
anybody can answer it, but it's really the weight is on the local community. It's a
It is.
local plan.
Right, but it would be interesting to hear what other people who may live in Warren County would have to say about what barriers have presented in terms of why they may not have moved to Lake Luzerne. If our population is declining, why is that? Why are, it's a great place to live, why are people moving here? So if we have, if someone from the outside of Warren County moves to make a break between, you know, going to Lake George or Lake Luzerne or the outskirts of Glens Falls, what issues are presenting? So just wondering how far the survey will go.
I don't know the answer to that, and I will think about it. I do know that some years ago, when Global Foundries started up in Malta, there was a huge group that said, oh, well, all these people will go to all these little communities like Warren and Boston Spa and Schuylerville and Mechanicville and build up the population. And this will be great, particularly not the tech workers, the high paid people, but all of the underworkers that are there, that they would come. In the end, that didn't really pan out. That impact was very minimal. It does happen, but it's very minimal. And most of those people are transient. And they use apartment living, and they go, sometimes they're in Malta, then they're shipped to California. So the demographics that we thought would actually stabilize, or the factors that would stabilize the demographics really never happened. So we don't have an impetus to really hold the population that's here once they graduate from high school and to attract new families. New families are fickle, and they want to know that you have internet. They want to know that their cell is going to work night and day, 24/7, right? And they want certain things, and they don't. Many of them don't even have any children, so they're not that interested in school. So, you know, you have to be thinking about a different type of person who wants to come here. So we'll try to figure that out. It's.
Want more tourism? There was an interesting rumor when you talked about you want more people discovering the beach on Lake Luzerne, and I gather that not everybody wants that. But But what about tourism in general? Is this something that people enthusiastically want, or you kind of like the peaceful, quiet?
That.
Good pleasure.
There you go.
Thank you.
I think we just dealt with that at a committee meeting, last time, I think, and really, what it was, remember when the sixties, when there were just constant motorcycles and cars, and Lake Bonaire was like a traffic jam, right? And, you know, people don't want it to go back to that. They like it quiet, they like the quaintness of it, and the, you know, that's what makes it special. It's you can drive away into the suburbs, into someplace that's quiet and predictable, quaint. Nice, it's nice. So, but at the same time, you have to stay economically viable, and that is your economy. So,
Now, what I'd say to that is, you know, there's a big difference between community growth and community development. Our goal here isn't growth, because growth is just a sum plus. It just means more of whatever that particular thing is. So part of our process here is to find out what is important to you, what are your resources, and then if you have visitors, how are you going to manage them when they get here? Maybe you don't want them in your quiet community on a private lake. You don't want them there, but you certainly want them in your downtown area supporting your businesses, or in an area that is possibly zoned to encourage that type of growth. So this is all about managing those expectations and putting those visitors where you want them.
But you were all visitors at one point. Who actually, so that's what I'm saying, is you were all visitors at one point. And you found this place. And so you found it, and you don't want anybody else to come? Come on. Like seriously, who is born here? I was born here. And everyone else, you're all visitors. And honestly, tourism has always been a part of this town. We just, like, I love, like, as a coach, one of my favorite expressions is, we only need everybody. That at this point in this town, you only need everybody. I mean, I'm not saying everybody, like, not the negative stuff, but you're very dependent on tourism. You always have been, now more than ever. So I'm just saying, don't shoot yourselves in the foot, because you now don't have a major employer. And so you're now not attracting young families. You're all found this beautiful place. The right kind of visitor is what you want. And you do want to attract them. I don't think that to tell them they're not wanted is a good move. I just don't understand how, without a major employer like IP, you're ever going to get to where you have very young families here. So embrace them. I grew up, I worked at Waterhouse, I worked at Hidden Valley before it was, when it wasn't double-A tolling woods. Okay, tourism has always been an intrinsic part of this area. The reason why they come is because of the lakes, is because of the hiking. It's not necessarily really because of the restaurants and stuff.
You're absolutely right.
People who come here, they don't like Lake George.
So
They want to come here and stay quiet.
I grew up in Florida.
Yep.
I moved away for 25 years.
Me too.
I came back, I settled in, and I moved to Lake Luzerne. We love the quietness, and we have friends that come from New Jersey, New York. They stay with us, and they absolutely love
Yes.
this town. But they're always asked, well, where do I eat? You know, why don't we have Wi-Fi? But they do love the area.
Yes.
We are an anchor to Saginaw, Lake George, everywhere. So
Saratoga.
to not embrace those people coming here is just stupid.
The amount of tourism that the outdoor activity recreation, all you have to do during the summer is look at any of the whitewater rafting parking lots
Yes.
or
Right.
the adventure center.
Yes.
Those people, in my
Revolution
opinion, are
Rail.
the people that you want.
Yes.
Revolution Rail is
Yes.
a wonderful example.
Potash.
Right.
I don't know how many guests I've
So
had
if you
that
could
love
take a
potash.
tenth of the people that are in the parking lots for 3 months a year and move them, give them someplace to go. downtown, or two places to go downtown.
And I don't think Great Escape is a big draw,
No,
to be honest with you.
This
Most of the
is-
people don't, that come to this area, they don't do Great Escape.
So
They want to see.
Last thing is, question, the problem is, they don't want Great Escape. They want to go to Potash, they want to go to Hadley Mountain Fire Tower. They want to go to the Saginaw Outdoor Center. They want all of the outdoor activities. So that's what they're looking for. Half, 10%, that's right, that's right. And they do, and I'm empowered, I have to say, I have to disagree with what you said at the board meeting. They do care about this area. They do care. They care about natural resources. The young people that we're attracting now, they're coming because the outdoor stuff, the lake, they like the hiking, they like all that stuff, the kayaking.
All right, guys. Patricia, I saw your hand up there for a while back. You're good? I'd like to keep on moving on if that's okay, guys. Promise me an ice cream cone.
It's a great point. It's a recreation economy here and you can build off of that and restaurants will come. We have to build this story. Yeah.
To the restaurant point, I don't know, does ACC have a hospitality school? Paul Smith has hospitality, are there joint things do with them to have a restaurant, them staff of a restaurant? That's a possibility.
They have one downtown, Fun Fall
Yes.
season, yeah.
There's
Yes, they do have season. But, there's, something that may work here in some place like an APC, doing pop-up. Maybe not committing to a place permanently, but pop-ups. You can invite restaurants to come and do a pop-up in your community. Just need a place, right? But we have a couple of closed restaurants here. But pop-ups are fun and they draw people from out of town as well as residents. Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on the restaurants. I spoke to several owners as they were closing. Because I was looking at some business opportunities here. There seems to be an employment problem for this community. Nobody wants to work. And where's down the business owner? I personally passed on a business opportunity here because of that. And it's just something about it, not knocking like Luzerne, I love it. But
There's an employment problem worldwide.
well, I get that, but it's even more so here. When I can speak.
Yeah. You guys have done a ton of work and I would like to hear it before 11 o'clock. So, but, I'm sure you guys would be open to like written feedback,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have more than on that sheet, but, just questions, comments that we can submit in writing to any of the committee members. Okay. I'm just making notes. I'm not gonna answer all my questions. I wanna I'll submit them and you guys can answer later on.
Let you guys loose, you probably need to have a conversation.
Well, we have George has J1, they have a lot of J1. To fill in where, because local kids don't want to work anymore, so they do have J1.
Well, they have a practice. Yeah, there's a lot of problems to solve with that. All right, we're gonna keep going here and finish the presentation.
So along the same vein, guys, is your local economy stable? Fluctuating? Can you keep a business here? Are you losing them? I think we just had a really long conversation about that. But that's, we've covered a lot of this, so why don't we keep on going? Hamlet improvements, do the streetscapes, meaning the sidewalks and the various elements that make up the walkability of your community, do they need improvements? You need lighting, do you need crosswalks, do you need better signaling? Is it safe to walk around across the street? Those are great questions. If you're downtown Hamlet area, beautiful. What about the 9N area? And does the community provide reasonable access to buildings and crossworks for the physically challenged? Are you inclusive? Can all people do that? think George, I believe, actually won an award for being very accessible to people in wheelchairs. Is your community similar to that? If I were a person with disabilities, would I feel comfortable being around your communities? And one of the things that came out of actually my walking tour in the Hamlet area is I took a look up and you have the beautiful houses right there on the street. And then there's a giant retaining wall behind it. There was a bunch of trees that kind of. And are those retaining walls good and intact? If anybody had any problems with it? Is that a infrastructure issue that needs to be addressed at some point? The question. Capital improvements. We talked a lot about the last one. Is the internet available throughout the community as well as the cell phone services? But what about other types of capital infrastructure? Do your roads need improvement? They state highways, local, who's maintaining them? What about municipal water or sewer? Do you have it? And what about other types of stormwater collection? You have flooding basements? What other type of flooding basement? I got that too. Keep going there. Okay.
You keep going. Well, thank you to this part. Take a rest.
Thanks.
Rest up. Rest up. All right, natural resources. You know, this is kind of my specialty. Rural community protection in the community. Are all your natural resources protected? Flooding issues. Talk about that. Is the community resilient? Are there any municipal or other buildings or facilities at risk from flooding? No, we have flooding issues with climate change. I experienced it at my own house and property near Lake George. 3-inch storm in 3.5 hours. That's all it takes. Took out the entire road and was $1 million. Is that an issue here? I mean, you have to think about that because, and that is very well funded right now. And you probably know, this is a government, New York State is very much into covering the cost of studying it and fixing the problem. So we have to look at that. Invasive species, we have particularly Lake Luzerne, and all the work that's been done on Lake Luzerne continues. There is the future possibility of an application for an herbicide called Priscillacor that might be considered. We have a survey person on the lake that will look at that and see how the current survey works, current suction harvesting is happening now, and what the results are. I went to Lake Menard and Fort Lake and kayaked them and did an informal survey, but honestly, I didn't see a lot of invasive plants.
Fort Lake doesn't have.
There's not a lot. There's some
It's not controlling.
curly leaf. Huh?
It's not being uncontrolled. We don't have motor boats in here.
But we have kayaks that come from. Yes, that's from, which is good, but that's also wrong. It's all connected.
Well, your biggest problem
It's gonna be birds, so
it's gotta be birds. Anyway, the water quality of local lakes. Do you think the water quality of local lakes is exceptional? Is it adequate? Good for. General. Exceptional. I think it is too. And some of our water quality data actually shows that. Okay, keep going. They can see the maps over here. All right, land use and zoning. Do your current zoning responsive to today's situation? We've already talked about that and the need to probably look at places for restaurants and other small commercial outfits that could be encouraged. Where should it be encouraged? That's another question, and we'll be working on that. Is there a need to revise the zoning to encourage residential development? Okay. Drew, I'm gonna let you do housing, because that's your specialty.
It sure is.
I'm sorry, can we go back one slide and we get to write down the second clause?
This is also up on the website. It's
Oh,
on the website.
but you guys have a website, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So in terms of housing, are there enough housing choices for all ages and financial abilities? From a working class individual, can I afford to live in a single family house here? If I can't afford to live in a single family house, is there adequate rentals? Or if I am a senior and I can no longer maintain the home that I've lived in for the last number of years, is there a place for me to downsize to? These are all really great questions. Now, there are a number of publicly funded programs that it can help homeowners that need assistance. That's something that your community needs. There's also mobile manufactured home replacement programs. You have a number of people who are elderly, disabled, low income, that live in severely dilapidated housing that need help. Are there seniors or disabled residents that need accessibility improvements? This goes to one of the issues that a lot of communities are worried about, which is aging in place. You've lived in this community for however long. You have your house where you've lived in there for maybe a good part of your adult life. And now, because of health issues and other things, is my home accessible to me? Can I get around? Do I need improvements in order to make that happen? If I can't do that, well, guess what, guys? I'm probably moving to one of those senior apartments in Clifton Park, where I could have those accommodations and not staying here in your community, not spend any money in your community, and no longer be a part of your community. So how do you keep not only young people, but people that live here? How do you keep people who live here here? If there's new housing, do you need new housing? If so, where do you think that development should be encouraged? Certainly, you don't want to be congested. That's not what any of you have indicated that you wanted here. But if you're going to create new housing opportunities, what type of housing opportunities? We've already mentioned senior housing. But what about townhomes, multi-unit rentals, things of that sort? Those things that could potentially support a workforce economy. And one of the bigger questions that we've been trying to tackle recently, is there an increase in short-term rental markets, mostly known as Airbnb, but that is not inclusive of VRBO or the other ones, in reducing permanent residential housing options? Are you seeing that there are a number of small corporations, other individuals that are purchasing up housing with the intention of leasing it out for short periods of time and thereby removing housing from the market and limiting the opportunities for new people to live here on a permanent basis? Is that a problem that you have in your community?
Let's have that. How many people think it is a problem in the community? Most people do.
It changes the culture. Only just from housing standpoint.
Well, that's an interesting thing. So you have an economy that's primarily tourism based. You have many communities that are mostly lake housing bungalows and other things. So what changes the culture of those individuals? And I'm just trying to get to the heart.
Yeah, right now it's simmering. But Florida, for example, it's overcoming everything. This is a very small town, goes from 3,000 some in the winter time, maybe to 5,000 summertime, 6,000. And if you get hundreds and hundreds of B&Bs, the owner isn't available. You don't know who's in the houses. You don't know what's going on in the houses. You increase your drugs coming in, the possibility. If there were 10 B&Bs, that's one thing, but if there are 200 of them, that's the other. And that's the concern of the town.
You need a balance.
Yeah.
You can buy a house.
You don't have a house for young people to move into.
But that's,
Sure you
but
can
that's
afford.
that's not a short-term rental problem, that's a global problem, and it's basically. That is the situation across the country, there's no first-time home buyer programs that will allow them to compete with a cash buyer, and that's something that's not a short-term rental problem. honestly, it's a problem across the country. What has to happen is that there has to be an affordable program for first-time home buyers. And right now, there used to be, but now there is not. They get beat out every single time. And that is not just something that is a short-term rental problem. They're getting beat out by people who can afford a second home. And I would like to see, I don't know if you have statistics on how many homes in Lake Luzerne are actually second homes for people and not primary, like, in other words, are they here? How long are they here? Because if you have a home that's purchased as a second home and the person's here for 30 days, that is underutilization of that home. And it's less economically savvy for us to be worried about a short-term rental that's actually being utilized, possibly an average of 100 nights, perhaps, versus someone who's here for only 30 days. They're not, I'm sorry, they're paying the property tax, they're paying the school tax, but they're not supporting the economy of this area if they're only here for 30 days. Some of them even less. I live in the Heights. I see it. It's a ghost town up there. Probably 3/4 or 80% of the year. The only time it was really booming was during COVID, when they had to come because they wanted to get out of the city. And honestly, they're here less than my neighbor. They're less than 30 days a year. They're not supporting this.
This is a critical problem right here in Lake Luzerne, right now, today. Housing. We have Airbnbs springing up, all of these older houses that are being bought up.
I have to agree with that.
There's an amazing number of them now. Realized.
There was an auction the other day that I was at, that numerous people, quite a few properties that are up for auction, that there are people going in there that are buying them up for Airbnb. They're not going in there and buying them as.
Now there's a property along the senior center right here, that they could develop into senior housing and affordable housing for young families that need a place to live. That could be developed. We have mobile homes that are not being enforced in terms of the ordinance that's on the books. We have RVs and motor homes now in residential areas on lots where there was a house at one time, or a lot that's been owned for a long time. And apparently, a trailer, a camper is not a mobile home. It's got wheels, it's got an axle, it's got a tongue, and all those things have to be removed in a mobile home park in the town. So this is a critical problem, and it's a problem that could overwhelm the town board very quickly.
There is a group of people from the town board and other boards that are tackling this problem. We're doing research. Actually, Jen and I went over to Lake George to see what their program for short-term rentals was. Bolton's is different, been looking at all the different short-term rental laws around the different communities to see what might work best for Lake Luzerne. So it is being worked
This
on.
time talking about taking care of tourists. We need to spend some time talking about taking care of the people who live here.
Totally agree with you, yeah.
I live on a street, residential area. And all of a sudden, last couple of years, nothing but strange faces down there. It's family residential, don't know them, a lot of cars, it's a dead end street. And motorcycles now, it's a cross section of Lake George, a cross section. Motorcycles, some louder than others, some faster than others. And now they have Canadians there. And it's a cross section of Lake George.
I'm
Is that nice?
Well, communities around you get laws in place and then you don't, that makes you vulnerable, even more vulnerable. So I think that this group is working on this. I'm very happy to hear this, right, Jen?
Yeah.
The discussion is very helpful to them to help guide them in the thoughts and discussions. So thank you for that. Thank you very much.
I just want to comment real quick. you were all tourists at one point. So was I. My parents were tourists. My parents are Canadian.
No, we're.
But you- but no, I was born here. Yeah, okay. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I do also say that a lot of people.
Doesn't make you better.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying,
You're saying
I'm
we're
not
wrong.
saying better or worse. I'm saying, when you bring people into the area, a lot of them stay. I mean, some people who are tourists end up buying properties and they stay and they live year round. You know, I just want to make that point that basically tourists are good for the area and a lot of them do stay. And a lot of them become, you know, they actually contribute to the economy.
Very good point. Okay, very good point.
I know quite a few people who have years or more, and then when they retire. They don't use the service that they pay for, and they don't complain about it. Because they like it. It's always pretty, senior housing in the back of the town hall, that was one of the goals originally, but funding doesn't. Funding and
So I just want to ask one question. You mentioned the first time homebuyer program.
Yeah.
Do you think this community needs a first time homebuyer program? Anybody else think that they need a first time homebuyer program?
I think that's a lot of people. Thinking about being there.
Okay, thank you very much for participating. It's been really great. I think everybody's staying. Really great. Website?
Town website, your portion of the town website. Town website. Does it allow to put the notice directly on the
It does not.
That's not.
I'd have to talk to the person who runs it, to see whether that's possible.
It's like a chat. Notes.
Yeah, I'll have to see whether, how capable they are of doing that. And I can-
Written notes.
Yeah. Not with me, you guys have a whole comment, crazy. Email me, or drop them off here. That's fine, there's comment sheets up there, and there are comments. Well, what we'll do is, you're gonna be end of the process, we'll back the document. So all your comments will be out there.
And the church's line is great.
Yeah.
This is a study that was published last October. It's by the five county regional planning boards. It's called Board Together. It addresses a lot of the stuff that needs to go to our plan. So we're talking about housing, I mentioned in here, I believe that now this is the entire number. So it talks about needing 121,000 units over the next 10 years. They actually have a program that's funded. They have a angel that's funded to actually start a company to build a home. In order to boost the population. One of the things that's happened in Luzerne is we've gotten really old, as you mentioned. But we are not encouraging anybody to come here, mainly because we haven't got any place for them to live, and we don't have any place for them to work. So part two of what I've got to say is Innovate 518. If you haven't heard of Innovate 518, it's a program in area code 518 to develop high-tech businesses which don't use a lot of natural resources, but they do need infrastructure. All the things we talked about infrastructure, they need it.
One of the partners of Innovate 518, Innovate 518 is headquartered out of SUNY Albany. One of the partners is ATP. Okay, now what they do is these provide incubators, which start businesses, accelerators, which move businesses forward, and shared workspaces. There's shared workspaces in Glens Falls, for example, they're part of this program. So look up Innovate 518. Find four together. It's a great detailed study. It's online. It's exciting. But this is the kind of thing that should go into the thinking that goes into the plan that we're trying to do. One of the things that happened last 10 years is we've gone backwards. But if you look at the 2010 plan, that was a non-growth plan, and it worked. You take a look at it up. I don't have the question. How many people here spoke against it? How many people actually walk this whole plan? One. This is not a walking community. Don't try and make us something we're not. We're not a walking community. If you're talking about all the tourism and everything else, the biggest tourism around here are that I can see is the rafting companies. Rafting companies are busy as crazy. People come into the rafting companies, spend their money with the rafting company, and they go home. They don't stay here. And by the way, rafting companies aren't owned by people like Luzerne. One's owned by Gold, one's owned by Warrensburg. How do I know this? Because I go. I try to raise money for the Salt Lake thing.
Well, they were going like,
Tries to get them to donate. They don't donate.
I run wildlife.
Just letting you know my experience. So these are companies that are making a lot of money off of us, and they're taking this back to their banks wherever they are. What we need to do is we need housing here and we need jobs. This is tells us about the housing. Innovate 518 might be a way, and we do have properties that you're talking about using our resources here. We have properties that potentially could become incubators and accelerators and shared workspaces here. Let's find out about the program. These are the kinds of things that I think our people are doing the planning should be looking at. The zoning is critical. Zoning, you know, they brought up the fact that we're not zoned for restaurants, we're not zoned for anything. If you take a look at our zoning versus the parking zoning, we are so far disparate. And by the way, the parking helps us. You're trying to do something, you can't do it unless the parking is it. So that's thing to do is sit together with the parking to see that I'm the same page. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen here, but these are some things that can help everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, what's gonna happen next? I'll put the comments together, I'll put it online, and I'll let you know about it. So please come around, make other comments about whatever you'd like.